I am Jools Holland.
And I am Jim Moir. Join us for Jools and Jim's Joyride.
Joyride. Yes, Joyride. Motoring memories.
Train travel trips.
Things on boats.
Air crashes.
Barrows and cycling moments.
Sex on the back seat of a Datsun. Our greatest racing carist. I wrote this, and I'm not quite sure about whether that's correct. Our greatest racing carist is driven so fast, Jools and I put together can't compete with his 100 miles per hour. Now, Damon, I think that's probably the best introduction you've ever had in your life.
Oh, by a long shot. It's a bit. I'm not sure I can accept the greatest racing carist title yet. I mean, there are a few other contenders.
Do you reckon?
Yes,
I'd stick with it.
I'd stick with it. If Jim's giving it to you, I just accept it. I mean, I suppose the thing is that you're one of the best loved, world champion, and one of the best loved as well. That's the other thing, you know.
I'll take that. I mean, I'm not sure how you quantify it, but I've always been well received, and I'm grateful for that. I mean, they could throw Rotten Tomatoes. There are a couple of times when it went a bit wrong, and I wasn't very popular.
Well, we forget about those moments, don't we? Isn't that the natural thing to do? I think you're probably the best. Although I'm looking behind you, there's lots of photographs, and there's your dad there. I see. I used to have a poster of your dad and Jim Clark on my bedroom wall when I was a kid. What did you have? Who did you have on your wall? Let me guess. Mark Bolan?
No, you see, Mark Bolan, I took a look at Mark Bolan, and I have to say, I thought, why is he wearing makeup? And I was a bit freaked out by that.
What do you thought it was a bit girly?
Well, it was a bit girly, you know, and I like the music, but I kind of went for the more sort of well-established machismo types,
like Black Sabbath.
Yeah, Led Zeppelin and people who there was no doubt about their identity.
I think there's room for everyone, you know. I actually remember going to school with bits of glitter on my cheek, like Mark Bolan. Me and my friend walked to school and said, let's get a group together. We're going to call ourselves the Boys. You know, because that was a bit, you know, it was kind of machismo and glam.
Yes. And what happened? Did the boys get together?
Nothing ever happened of it. You know, we were told to take the glitter off our cheeks by our parents and never speak of the matter again.
But actually, Jim's got a point there. I mean, when he's talking about who you are, who's on your wall, sort of thing, or certainly at that age. So who did you have as a poster on your wall?
Well, I kind of because I think racing drivers were around me when I was growing up. I was, and my dad was one. I didn't think of them as anything exceptional. You know, they were my dad's mates. So Jim Clark was my dad's mate. It was obviously quite serious because I remember when he got killed. So I knew that it was quite a serious life that my dad led. But once I was about 11 years old, I discovered motorbikes. And then I discovered that there were these things called motorcycle races. And so I pretty quickly had pictures of guys who motocrossed. I particularly like the pictures of guys motocrossing in California because the English guys, they kind of went round on motorbikes that got buried in mud and stuff. But the Californian guys, they all look pretty smart and they were drifting their bikes in the dirt and the dust and stuff. And then I followed people like, you know, Barry Sheen and Giacomo Agostini.
I rode on Barry Sheen's bike. Because I did a documentary about him, and it was insured for 15 million, and I think I was insured for less than $1 million. So,
what's the most valuable thing here in order of insurance? You're the bottom of the list.
Yeah, I was much less.
You're quantified in medical treatment, though, aren't you? You're not kind of quantified in resale value.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell you what, now we're on motorcycles and motorcycling heroes, I beat Kevin Schwantz in a race once. Do you believe that?
No.
Well, I'm telling you, it's absolutely true. Let me say this, though. It wasn't on motorcycles. It was on milk floats around a small circuit at Donington.
This is one of the early electric vehicles, then?
The milk float, yeah.
And you like a light commercial. So
I love a light commercial and a milk float. Yeah, you don't see them. They're not around anymore, are they?
No.
I hear a man coming around. He comes around delivering milk in a BMW. And he gets it out of his boot. He comes past our house at about 4 a.m. But the rattle of a milk float is a great thing.
The whine.
A bit confusing. Why are they called a float?
Because they gently float through the streets silently, like a whisper.
And you can make a kind of a kind of root beer float or something, kind of using ice cream.
But so when you so Damon, going back to your so you're looking at the motorcycles or the American motorcyclists, and because also they do always make it look a bit more glamorous. They're sort of doing all the motocross, and then there's a picture of them. They're all smoking a fag and sort of got sort of draped with sort of Marilyn Monroe and everything afterwards. Whereas over here you've got Jeff Duke having a mug of tin tea at the end of the whole sort of thing. Completely different story. But so did you get into what was your first motorcycle you had then?
Well, I begged my dad to get me one of these little mini bikes because I thought I was not big enough for a big bike. So there was this, it just shows the power of advertising. When you're 10 years old, you see a photograph of a child-sized motorbike. And I insisted, I wanted a bike, and that was the one for me. And my dad, very, bless him, he actually got me one for passing my 11 plus, which I didn't even know I took it. I mean, I had no idea.
You didn't know you'd done your 11 plus. So what, you got an 11-year-old's bike? 12-year-olds?
Yeah, it was called a Honda Mini Trail, which I had until very recently, and then it disappeared from my garage somehow, and I don't know where it's gone.
So how did you make the jump from this 12-year-old's, the 11 plus and the 11 plus bike that your dad's given you? Then, like racing bikes is quite a different thing. If people have never tried racing, it's absolutely terrifying. In fact, you've got to, everything speeds up beyond what you think is fast, and to be a not very good racing driver, it takes enormous skills and courage. But to be a really great one is a completely different jump again. But how did you make the jump from having an 11 plus bicycle to a motorcycle to then actually racing the things?
Well, my dad can be partly to blame because he did motocross when he was younger. And so after I got this little bike, he got some bigger bikes, trials bikes actually, Bultacos, and so we used to ride around the garden in those. And then sadly he died when I was 15, and I was I was let loose on the world, and I got a moped. And my ambitions sort of grew from there. I got a Puch Grand Prix, which had magnesium wheels, which is
very good. I like the Puch, which was the sort of watchword for sort of moped, and coupled with the word Grand Prix. It's a nice sort of
Is there such a thing? Is there a Puch Grand Prix?
It was called a Grand Prix, the model of the bike. So other people had the Suzukis and the FS1Es, and I thought I'd be clever and get one with disc brakes and stuff. So I kind of had these ambitions that were kindled by that. And then as soon as I could, before I even left school, I went down to Brands Hatch and did their racing school and bike racing school. And I just went off down that road literally and decided to pursue racing bikes.
But that must be if you must have stood out at the school because because the racing lessons you've turned up everybody turns up, but you must have kind of been quite sort of fast then.
They gave me some award, but because my dad was famous, I always assumed that anything that anyone showed any attention to me, it's because my dad was famous or something. So I never really kind of took what they were offering. Maybe they meant it sincerely, but they did give me some award, but they got some PR as well because I'd won it and won some award. And I kind of had this in the back of my mind that I've got to somehow shake this stigma off and actually, show that I can really do it and really warrant some recognition, rather than it just be simply because I'm the son of a famous person. So I kind of battled against myself quite a bit in early days in sport.
What did your dad drive when he wasn't on the track?
He was, like most racing drivers, don't drive
flashy cars. So what did he have? Did he have a light commercial?
He had a Ford Granada. Light commercial.
A Granada? Brown?
He had some sort of link with Ford for a long while. So we had a string of Fords. We had a Ford Zephyr, Ford Zodiac, Ford Consul. Yeah. In fact, yeah. So Ford Granada.
That's cool.
My dad had a Granada. And my dad actually also had sort of whiskers, and it was very nice. This sort of that sort of style. And
it was the one in the Sweeney. It was one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what my dad. Very good with a vinyl roof.
Yeah.
Yeah, what he was, it would have been the GXL with all the options then.
All the options
with the new thing, which was plastic seats.
Yeah.
Was it plastic inside? Fully plastic. Yeah.
Yeah, plastic
nice.
in it.
Nice. Did you have a cassette or an 8-track?
No, a cassette, I think. Yeah.
Do you remember what you had on it?
We had Elton John.
Was that your dad? What your dad's favourite was Elton John?
I don't know if it was his favourite. I think my dad had kind of curious musical taste. I think he liked music hall songs.
Did he?
Nice.
Oh, well, that's good. No, that's great, isn't it? So,
what music hall ones did he like? Can you remember?
Well, it was just he used to love singing that song, which is actually from Pinocchio, isn't it? Hi diddly dee, an actor's life for me. He used to always sing that.
What was he was driving around in his Granada? Hi diddly dee, an actor's life for me.
That's such a great idea.
He wasn't much of a singer, but he knew how to whistle anyway.
For you but not just a world champ, but as a professional driver, if you get in next to... What is the etiquette? If you get in next to somebody who's like just sort of basically frightening the shit out of you and clearly doesn't know what they're doing, what do we do?
Wrestle a steering wheel off them.
Yeah. You have start a fight in the car and try and get into the footwell where the brake is, and try and detach them from the controls.
Yes. Try and get the brake in your teeth, and
the key, you can't pull the key out anymore. You used to be able to switch it off or something. But
don't pull the key out and throw it out the window.
Yeah.
So and I love very nice hearing about your dad's Granada. What's the first car that you can remember your dad having? I mean, I suppose what I really mean is, what's the first time you remember noticing cars and thinking, "Hey, I quite like that's sort of recognising him as a thing of interest."
Well, I have to disappoint you here, Jools. I've never really been that knowledgeable about cars. The cars he had, I think the Jag was quite interesting because it made nice noise. I think it was a Mark II Jag. But he didn't have the flash cars. Oh, I'll tell you one thing he had was a Lotus Elan, one of the very early Lotus Elan plus twos. He had a silver one because he raced for Lotus, so that was quite fun.
I suppose you got them all free. Do you get free? What's the best free stuff you've ever got, Damon?
Yeah, you can have a lot of free stuff, but there's always a price, I've found. There's somewhere you have to pay for it.
That Tony Pitts told us, what we'd like to hear about your free car, but Tony Pitts, the actor, he was in Emmerdale Farm and he persuaded a local Seat dealer, who was a friend of his uncle's, that if he put him in a Seat car, and he was only very young, it would be great publicity for Seat and the dealership. So anyway, eventually he couldn't believe it, but they agreed. So he got to a dealership, and there was the very base model Seat with no extras, like no heater, probably no radio, nothing, and written on the side. What did they have written on the side of the door?
I am Tony Pitts.
No, it's just a Seat supplied for Tony Pitts of Emmerdale Farm by so and so dealer on the side of the. So that was There's no free lunch.
So I'd like that. I would have that on the side of my car, sponsored by Refreshers or something like that.
Have you had any of those, Damon?
You could pull that off, because it is. I've had that, someone's car dealership splash down the side of your car, and it's kind of embarrassing because you do stick out a little bit. So you tend to.
You had your name on the side of a car.
When I raced, I did, yeah.
No, not around not when you down your high street, pulling up outside Radio Rentals in a car that says "I am Damon Hill" on the side of it.
The world champion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, world champion Damon Hill drives a Renault Figaro.
I can confess this one. I will confess this one, and I don't know what it says about me, but I hope it comes out right. But I did have to go to one of those speed workshops once, and the very nice people who do the speed workshops explained
speed awareness course.
Speed awareness, that's it. Yeah, speed awareness course. So you were all naughty, and we all sit in the room, and we have explained to us the error of our ways and thinking. And I'm 100% in support of what they're doing. But we were told, obviously, we don't want, some people here might not want anyone else to know that they've broken the law and are in trouble. So we're going to put name tags, but you can put whatever name you like on the thing, and we'll just call you that name, okay? So I couldn't help it. I put the champ, which was probably a bit cheek, probably not the right. I shouldn't have done it.
Did anyone
But
comment?
I think they
on
knew
it?
who I was anyway, because everyone was looking at me. So I thought,
Yeah, you might as well.
But I went on one of those, and it was like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, because you had to stand up and say your name and how many miles a year you did, and what sort of car you had and everything. And it was
What,
really
and how many miles
embarrassing.
an hour you went?
Yeah. But actually, what was your you convicted for? What was your crime?
you can't ask me that. That's it. You know that you can't ask people what they were in for. You can't.
I mean, were you doing sort of 190 and a 20 mile an hour limit, or was it just sort of 75 and a 70 mile an hour limit?
There was a camera slowing down going into a village, but I just was going a bit too fast. And there was another one. There was another one that I got done about 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of nowhere, which I felt was a little bit hard, bit hard cheese. But, you're supposed to stick to the rules, so...
Yeah, you're a recidivist. But there was our funny enough, when we were touring, we used to have we got these rental cars, and then in the office we got sent a thing through saying that one of the cars had been sort of busted for speeding, and we want to know who it is. So we thought, so we're looking up first of all I thought, well, let's look what day it is. And I looked and checked in my diary, and it was like an incredibly foggy day, and we were going across from like somewhere like Aberdeen to Glasgow or something like that. We had to go through this foggy, and I just remember it. And so I thought, so anyway, we worked out who was driving the car, and I said to them, but I've just looked in my diary. It said you were clocked at doing 90 miles an hour, but it was like one of the foggiest days of the year. I said, what were you doing that speed in the fog? He said, well, I couldn't see the speedo because of all the fog.
Do you know, one of the first incidents I ever remember in a car was my dad had a Bond mini car because I think what the story is the three-wheeler.
Yes.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Orange.
The Bond bug.
Orange.
No, it's not before. No, before the bug, it was a Bond minicar, and it had a little Villiers engine in the front. And if you wanted to reverse, you had to open the bonnet and turn the engine round. And but he no,
I don't believe that.
No, it's true. And because he was a road racer on motorcycles, and he I don't think he ever passed a driving test, so he was allowed to drive a Bond minicar, and we had a terrible crash in fog on our way to Scarborough. I remember I must have been about 5, but I remember that, and that was the end of that. But I remember that you had to open the bonnet and turn the engine around to put it in reverse.
Yeah, it's not very. That's pretty.
That is very eccentric. That's very British, isn't it? Very kind of Heath Robinson.
I've heard you also have to do that in Rolls Royces.
Not anymore. Do you think, people said to me, oh, are you from a musical family? I remember being interviewed on the television once. I said, no, not really. Later that day, this was years ago, later that day, my grandmother was still alive. She said, I saw you saying that. She said, I played the piano, your mother played the piano, both my sisters played the piano, your other grandmother, of course you're from. And I thought, oh yeah, I hadn't thought, thanks very much. But
did you say, but I'm better than all of them?
So it didn't seem to be worth mentioning. so do you think, like obviously your father drove, did you have any other relatives that were sort of
well, my granddad, my dad's dad, never drove a car in his life. So it's a curious thing, where does the talent come from? Mario Andretti was asked, whether he believed in natural racing drives, and he said, well, he's never seen a baby born holding a steering wheel. It's not. How do you determine it's natural? It's not. It's a relatively new thing. Where were racing drivers before they invented the car? What did they do?
That's right. How many medieval racing drivers can you name?
Not one at the moment. I like the story. At Stirling Moss when he used to race, but had a champagne bottle on the passenger seat as he was in the Grand Prix. And who else?
I think that was Le Mans.
Who what?
They did that at Le Mans. In Le Mans, they did do that.
Yeah, they'd have and Barry Sheen had a hole drilled in his helmet so he could have a fag on the grid. Imagine that nowadays.
Yeah.
What do you? So you'd be driving around doing the Grand Prix, smoking a fag and drinking out of a can of lager.
Well, I sold quite a few cigarettes, so shame on me, but it was all the rage in those days.
What Rothmans on the side of you?
And other brands are also available.
Yeah.
Did you? I suppose it's Now the advertising that you get on your car, what was it? It's usually fags and drink, isn't it? You wouldn't have Persil on or something. Did you have Persil on there? Would you get that?
One of the ones you'll like this one. One of the races I had, I won in Japan, and I got sponsorship, and they had the front of my arm, my forearm. And it was a penis enlargement clinic in Japan. So and I won the So it was like, I'm on the podium. They're going, can you hold your arm up a bit higher? Sort of. So we've had some strange sponsors. I mean, we could have had all the Blue Nun we wanted at one stage.
But no one wanted it. Yeah, so, do you remember when you were on Shooting Stars? No, you were on Shooting Star. Do you remember when you were on Shooting and we buried you under a sea of mushrooms?
That was fantastic. It was a bit cruel.
It was cruel, yeah, very cruel. We gave you a tube. You lay down on the bed of mushrooms. Then we covered you completely in mushrooms, and you had to throw crisp bags out from the bar just by feeling them. And then we all turned the lights out and went. The whole studio left.
Well, it was quite. Have you ever been buried in mushrooms, Vic?
No, but I was quite envious of seeing you being buried in mushrooms.
Were they live mushrooms?
Well, they were real mushrooms. Yeah, I was thinking
fakes.
That must have cost quite a bit. What a massive waste of money. They were all used later on. Damon Hill flavoured mushrooms in the canteen at the BBC from that week on. What's the worst car you've ever had? Have you ever had a crap car?
Too many to name.
Go on then. What's the worst car you've ever had?
Worst car I've ever had. Actually, I'll tell you what it was. It was a Ford Zephyr, from the Zodiac, the last Zodiacs they made, and they were like an aircraft carrier front to them. But it was the underpowered Ford Zephyr that had a V4 engine in it. And this aircraft carrier, it was known as one of the worst cars ever made anyway. And Squeeze had a gig somewhere, and I said, well, why are we hiring a car? This is mad. My mate's just offered me this Ford, Zicky Dobson's just offered me this Ford Zephyr with a big thing for 25 quid. So let's buy that. Good idea. Instead of renting these cars. So we buy the Ford Zephyr, and we drive, and we've got a show in maybe sort of up north, Lancaster University or something like that. We drive up there, and an hour from the gig, there's just a bang, and then oil comes up the windscreen. We're sort of driving this thing, and that was the end of the engine. But we had to get to the gig, so the truck towed us. Well, we had maybe a full transit van with the gear in it, towed us to the gig. We played to these students at sort of midnight or whatever, finish, then get back in the car, and we're then towed back to London in the car with no heating on a freezing cold night. And then by the time we've got back to London, it's a rush hour in the morning, and it's got to drop one person off in Catford, one in Blackheath, one in... Oh, no. And we're in the rush hour in a freezing cold, having been towed all night in this sort of car. And I think that was the worst car that I ever had. Yeah, Zephyr.
And was that a well-known bad car?
Oh, was it the Zephyr? I'm trying to think what it was. The last series of the Zodiac, about 1969 sort of car.
That story though, you how much did that car cost you?
25 quid.
25 quid when we got it. Yeah.
25 quid. So why didn't you just buy another car where you were for 25 quid?
Well, we would have done if we'd have seen one. But no, we sort of learned our lesson by then about buying cars. Never buy another car again if this is what it's going to be like.
The Beetle died a death. I went with my then girlfriend, but eventually my wife, Georgie, to see her mum in Colchester, and the Beetle dropped a valve as I turned off the A11. And so I had to dump it by the side of the road. And I spent the weekend going through the local newspapers to buy a car to get back home. And I ended up buying a Cortina Mark III Cortina.
Oh, nice. And how was that?
That was all right, but it wasn't as charming as the Beetle. No. And I don't think I ever saw the Beetle again.
There's a charm to the Beetle. The worst car, it was a great car, but a bad car, I had an Austin Somerset, and it was forever breaking down, and I think it cost me £1,000 to buy, and after I'd spent £3,000 on it and it still wasn't working, I thought it's doomed. And Omnibus were making a documentary about Bob and me, and they wanted something to do, and I said, well, I'm going to bury that car. So I got a digger and dug a hole in the field outside my house, which is now Paul O'Grady's house, but in that field out the back, I dug a hole and put the Austin Somerset in it and filled it in. So I buried the car.
It's like an artwork.
Have you ever been back to visit it?
No, apparently Paul O'Grady, who bought the house off me, has completely covered it, because it was a kind of, people would be crossing the field. It was a big field. People had come there to have a look at it, and he got sick of that, so he covered it in. So it's now detectable only by radar or
advanced search and heat equipment. But also, presumably, if you try to now plant a magical wood above there, nothing will grow there, and in years to come there'll be other legends why nothing will grow in this place and the birds won't sing.
Yeah.
But actually, it's just because you've buried a Austin Somerset underneath.
Yeah. Jools, what do you and your ruthless gang of Teds dine on?
Tyne brand mixed grill. Out of interest, what any other? Because it is it's a tribute to transport. Our show is motoring. But you're a professional, world champ and all that. But if you were using other methods of transport, boats, trains, planes, what other bicycles? What other sort of things do you like?
I've pretty much, I must have done most things, but I've had to go with this jet flying. You know, this flying man who's got this jetpack thing.
You've tried one of those?
A jetpack.
Yeah, he's got one goes on your back.
Yes.
And it's got a jet engine, and then you've got two on your arm, 2 jets on each arm, and you kind of control yourself.
But have you tried it?
I have tried it, yeah.
Wow, do you know anybody else ever?
No.
I've never met anybody who's actually tried a jetpack.
And I don't know if I can say I'm jealous, because I'd be terrified. You know, how high do you get?
About 6 inches.
Well, I'm all right with that.
But hang on a second. You're still in British airspace. Doesn't matter if it's 6 inches or 6,000 feet. Once you left the ground, that's it. Did you have a license?
You have to have a license. I didn't have a license, no. But I was suspended. There was a cable that connected me just in case it went out of control.
Oh, so you were on a Kirby wire?
Yeah. So you sure it wasn't just the Kirby wire that was lifting you up? And then he said, "Yeah, look, you can buy the jetpack. It's 50,000."
This story's really starting to sound very dodgy now. You were at a circus on a Kirby wire, weren't you? And someone had put a shoebox on your back and said it was a jetpack.
It's not entirely clear that I was really flying.
Where did you try? I have to say, you're the first person we've had on that's done a jetpack. That really is impressive. Where did you go?
I think I probably had my time jet flying. I mean, it is a wonderful. It's really fantastic once it starts to lift you off the ground, but it's terrifying because you have got, like I said, on each arm you've got these massive creme brulee burners, and if you're not careful, you can point them at your leg or something. Yeah. They're terrifying.
I saw a documentary about this recently, and the fellow who designed it, the heat that came out of the back of the packs had heated up the ground, and he couldn't actually stand on the ground because it was so hot.
Because it was too hot. But the other thing, what somebody came up with some years ago, which was unfortunately never fully developed, because I would have bought one of these. It was about 20 years ago, and it was a fellow that had worked out how you got little airships, like miniature, like almost like a barrage balloon, attached to, but like the size of a room or the size of a garage, a single lock-up garage, that sort of a size, that would have supported you, and it had a bicycle type of contraption attached to the bottom of it, and then a sort of a propeller at the back, all very lightweight, and then you pedalled the bicycle. So it would basically, you flew along, pedaling yourself along with this propeller and then this bicycle, and you just pedal around on these things. And I would have bought one of those, but that again, you were going to be in once you entered British airspace once you left the ground. So there was a whole licensing issue that went on with them.
Does that include hovercrafts?
What you saying?
Well, you've kind of left the ground on a hovercraft, aren't you? So is it a land or an air-based vehicle? The hovercraft. There's something to think about.
Yes.
Nobody's going to, though. Nobody's going to think about that.
You might be right. I think maybe technically, I think you are right that it's left the ground and it's in air, but it's not going to go very high. I mean, this guy who flies the jetpack, he gets a good 20, 30 feet up and just flies through the trees and stuff.
Last question would be: is out of interest. You've driven the fastest cars in the world. Is there a dream car
What's
left?
the slowest car?
Yes, actually, one. What's the slowest car you've ever driven, apart from the Volkswagen? But have you got a dream car left? That's what I want to know.
Alan Partridge. That's an Alan Partridge joke, that one, because he interviews the French, France's second best racing driver. Do you remember that? Do you remember that sketch he did? And he says that was the question: what's the fastest car ever driven? What's the slowest car ever driven?
Oh, is it? It's been done. Oh, well, I've raised that then.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, and I thought I was being unique
anyway,
once again.
Sorry, Steve couldn't beat you to that one.
But so any dream cars left that you'd like to sort of get to put in that garage there?
Yeah, I've been looking. It's a difficult thing. They haven't quite made the car yet, have they? They're kind of we're in this middle area where the range thing isn't quite there, and also there's the carbon footprint of the new car. So it's a massive carbon footprint to buy a car. So I will go electric eventually. I think we're all going to go that way, aren't we? So
yeah, but what I meant was, there's nothing like, you always dreamed of having, a sort of a 1930s Mercedes racing car, or an Austin A35 pickup truck, or something like that. Something you've always wanted to have. You might never get it, but just something you always dreamed of.
I have always kind of liked the Americana. I like the sort of Dodge Chargers and stuff. I wouldn't mind, something that's a stylish car of its era, but it's bound to be a gas guzzler, isn't it? But if you don't drive it all the time, I'm sure it'd be fine. But Dodge Charger or something like that. Or
well, you can get one of them. If you shout loud enough, you might get one with the bit knocked off.
Which bit?
Anyway.
Well, I hope I've managed to answer all your questions
I think you've,
correctly.
Correctly, yes.
Completed our survey.
Yes, thank
you.
you.
Great success. Thank you. Thank you. Well, there goes Damon Hill, the world champion motor racer, going off on his jetpack and travelling all the way home at 6 inches above the ground.
You could say, he's a marvellous fellow, Damon, and I wouldn't have a word said against him, but do you think it was true that what he was saying about the jetpack?
No, I think he's been conned. I think someone has put him on a Kirby wire and said there's a jetpack.
And so we've got to save him. I don't want him scammed like that.
Someone's trying to dupe. Someone's trying to sell him a jetpack, aren't they? Whereas really, what it is a shoebox with a couple of toilet rolls off the.
And then somebody else wires you up when you're not looking. I think what we've got to just warn some of the listeners to this: if you get a cold calling or somebody at your door saying, "Do you want a jetpack?" make sure they're an authorised agent. And
it'll be very like that hovercraft that you bought that turned out to be a wheelbarrow.
Have you got a motoring related song there?
I most certainly have. My old mane says follow the vein and don't dilly-dally on the way. Oft went the vein with me own pegs in it. I was behind with me old cock linnet, but I dillied and dallied, dallied and dillied, lost me way and don't know where to go. And you can't trust a special like I